This story is for those who've been broken by others or are seeking deeper meaning in a world that often looks away. Because sometimes the eyes may lie, but the heart always sees. In the heart of downtown Chicago, amid the towering buildings and honking cars, lived a man no one dared to ignore. His name was Mr. Clarence Haywood, a real estate mogul, multi-millionaire, and one of the most recognized faces on the Business Channel. But what many didn't know was that 3 years ago, after a series of personal betrayals and heartbreaks, he had made a radical decision. He vanished from the public eye, sold off a large portion of his assets, and reappeared on the streets disguised as a blind man. Not because he was blind, but because he wanted to see the world differently. Every day, Clarence wore a faded jacket, dark sunglasses, and carried a white cane. He would walk the streets near Lincoln Park, pretending to be blind. Most people passed by him like he was invisible. Occasionally someone dropped change in his tin cup, but never a conversation. Until he met her. Her name was Grace, a 17-year-old girl with a fire in her spirit and storms in her eyes. She sat 3 blocks down on the corner near the local cafe, playing her broken violin for anyone who'd listen. Her clothes were worn, her shoes barely held together, but her music. Her music could hush even the noisiest soul. Clarence had walked past her several times before, always listening, always curious. One day, when the wind was particularly sharp, he stopped right in front of her and tilted his head as though listening closely. "You like it?" she asked, her voice both proud and uncertain. Clarence nodded slowly, still keeping his blind man act intact. "Yes, it reminds me of something I lost a long time ago." She smiled faintly and kept playing. That was the first day of many. Each day, Clarence would sit on the cold concrete bench opposite her. He'd listen, never say much, and she'd play. They began to develop a silent friendship, a bond between a man who pretended to be blind and a girl who had seen too much. Grace was no ordinary teenager. She had lost both parents in a car accident 2 years ago. With no close family to take her in, and the foster care system failing her at every turn, she ended up on the streets. She survived by playing music and sleeping in abandoned buildings. Despite everything, she never begged. She gave music, kindness, and a smile that could melt the ice off Chicago's winters. Clarence noticed that. He saw it all, even from behind his glasses. One evening, when snow began to fall early, Clarence offered his scarf to Grace. She looked at him, puzzled. "You need it more than I do, sir. You can't see your way around in this weather." "I feel my way," he said softly, and she nodded, not questioning further. What Grace didn't know was that Clarence had already started following her, not to harm her, but to protect her. He watched from a distance as she shared her food with stray animals, as she covered a drunk man with her own blanket, as she offered hot tea to a struggling waitress outside the cafe. She was homeless, hungry, and barely surviving, but her heart was a gold mine. Clarence couldn't take it anymore. He wanted to help her, but he needed to be sure. So he did something unusual the next day. He dropped a diamond-studded cufflink, worth at least $10 near the bench where she sat. Then he waited. Grace finished playing, stood up, and noticed the cufflink. She held it in her hand, examined it, looked around. Then she saw Clarence sitting across, still pretending to be blind. She approached him. "Sir, I think this might be yours. It looks expensive." Clarence didn't respond immediately. I don't know how it got there, but someone like me would probably try to sell it. But that's not me. She gently placed it in his gloved hand and walked away. Clarence sat there for a long while, the snow collecting on his shoulders, eyes hidden behind dark lenses, now filled with tears. This was the moment. The test was over. He followed her quietly that evening, making sure she got to her temporary shelter safely. Then he made a decision. He wouldn't just help her, he would change her life. The next morning, Clarence didn't show up in his usual disguise. Instead, a black limousine pulled up next to Grace while she played. The driver stepped out and handed her a small envelope. She looked confused. "This is for you. Someone's been watching over you, and now he wants to give you a future." Inside the envelope was a letter that read, "Dear Grace, you see the world with more honesty than most people who can see. You give even when you have nothing. You heal others while you're still broken. You pass the test of humanity without even knowing it. Please accept this as the beginning of a new chapter. CH." Beneath the letter was a deed to a fully furnished apartment in her name, a college scholarship application already approved, and a check that could support her until she finished school. Grace was stunned. Her hands trembled as she read through the papers again and again. Who is CH? The driver smiled, but said nothing. Days passed. Then one Sunday morning, as she exited her new apartment, she saw him, not blind, not wearing old clothes, but standing tall in a crisp suit, smiling. "Mr. Haywood," she asked, gasping. "You know me? I saw you on the news years ago. You disappeared?" He nodded slowly. "I had to find something I'd lost, and I found it in your music and your heart." "Why me?" "Because you reminded me of what humanity should look like." Grace broke down crying and hugged him tightly. That day, Clarence told her everything, how he pretended to be blind to test people's hearts, how most failed, and how she was the only one who restored his faith in kindness. He offered her mentorship, a job at his new music foundation for street youth, and promised to be in her life from that moment forward. But Grace, humble as ever, said, "If I take all this, I need to use it to give others the same hope." And that's what she did. Clarence kept his word. He didn't just change Grace's life, he built a new one around her. In the weeks that followed, Grace moved into her apartment, started attending classes at a community college, and helped Clarence design the beginnings of a music foundation. They called it The Blind Can See, a name chosen by Grace herself. It's not about sight, she told him once, standing in the office of their new foundation, overlooking the city skyline. It's about seeing people, really seeing them. The story of the millionaire and the violin girl quietly spread through the city. News channels picked it up. People came forward, some inspired, others ashamed, recalling the times they had walked past Grace without a second glance. But Grace didn't carry bitterness. Instead, she said to a reporter, "People aren't always unkind. Sometimes they're just afraid to feel." The foundation opened its doors to dozens of homeless children and teens, giving them shelter, music, therapy, and education. Grace taught violin in the evenings, sharing not just melodies, but resilience. Every string she played told a story of survival, of loss of love, and of someone who once pretended to be blind just to truly see her. But not everyone was happy. Clarence's sudden reappearance made headlines. Some of his old business associates thought he'd gone mad. His board members accused him of destroying his legacy for a street girl. And when they found out, he'd funneled millions into the foundation. One of them tried to sue him for misuse of company funds. For a moment, Clarence felt the old walls closing in. But this time, he wasn't alone. Grace stood by him, not as someone needing help, but as a partner. "Let them come," she said. "They only see money. We see people." They took the case to court. The courtroom was packed the day Grace walked in, violin in hand, and stood before the judge. She didn't speak about money. She spoke about music. "Your Honor," she began, "when I was cold, I played. When I was hungry, I played. When people looked away, I played. Not because I hoped for money, but because I hoped someone would feel something again." Then she played a single, heartbreaking melody. The courtroom fell silent. Lawyers put down their pens. Even the judge's eyes shimmered. When she finished, she said, "That man," pointing to Clarence, "heard me when no one else did. If that's a crime, then maybe the world needs more criminals like him." The judge ruled in their favor. From that day, donations poured into the foundation. Not just from the rich, but from ordinary people, janitors, teachers, waitresses, even former foster kids who had heard her story. But just as things seemed to settle into peace, life took a cruel turn. Clarence was diagnosed with a degenerative eye disease. Ironically, the man who had pretended to be blind was now actually going blind. Grace cried when she found out. "It's not fair," she whispered in his hospital room. Clarence just smiled. "Maybe this is life's way of making sure I keep seeing the world the way I should, with my heart." As his vision faded, he passed the torch to Grace. "You'll carry it better than I ever could," he said. And she did. Years passed. Grace graduated, took over full leadership of The Blind Can See Foundation, and expanded it to multiple cities. She became a public speaker, an advocate for youth rights, and a fierce protector of those the world forgot. On what would have been Clarence's 70th birthday, she played his favorite melody in the same spot where she used to sit on the cold sidewalk, across from the bench where he first listened. The bench now had a plaque. In loving memory of Clarence Haywood, he pretended to be blind so the world could finally open its eyes. People gathered around, some crying, others placing roses. As Grace finished the piece, she looked up to the sky and whispered, "You saw me when no one else did, and now I see the world through your eyes." Then she turned to the crowd and said, "If this story touched you, if it made you feel even a little more human, then don't forget it. Share it. Live it. And always remember, it doesn't cost a cent to be kind. It only costs a choice." Final message to viewers, subscriber motivation. If you believe that the world still has good people, if this story moved you, then subscribe to our channel. Every week, we bring you powerful stories that remind us all what really matters. Not fame, not wealth, but the heart. So stay with us, feel with us, and help us open more eyes. Hit that subscribe button, because the next story could be the one that changes your life.